Pay attention to the woman in this footage. She is unaware that someone is lurking outside, waiting to take her life. This is May, and she's just entered a crime scene. Her quest is to find evidence that proves someone has been hired to murder her entire family, all while remaining oblivious to the fact that she has become the next target. Just 2 days before this recording, May enjoyed a happy life with her young children. She shared a close relationship with her mother Narcy and her stepfather Ben, who was the only father figure she ever had. Ben was even planning to adopt May on Father's Day, solidifying their bond just days prior. However, everything took a dark turn when Ben was kidnapped and found in a hotel room, struggling to survive. I couldn't believe my eyes as I witnessed the horror unfold. The truth is, it was a brutal scene unfolding before us. Someone is plotting to murder the entire Novak family, targeting them one by one. If it weren't for May uncovering a horrifying secret, we might never have known. The woman captured in the footage is none other than May's own mother. This revelation hints that we've only scratched the surface of a much darker reality. You found me dead and handcuffed for 2 days. What we did during that time, don't dismiss it so easily. I always sensed a hint of darkness inside her, but I never imagined she would go this far. It's 1982, and Narcy Valise, along with her 4-year-old daughter May, has just arrived in Miami, Florida, leaving everything behind in Ecuador. With May's father having left before her birth, Narcy and her daughter quickly found themselves facing the world alone. Moving to the United States seemed like a fresh start, but upon their arrival in America, opportunities proved to be scarce. Narcy, forced to take any job available, began working as a seamstress. However, when that income wasn't enough to support them, the 23-year-old single mother turned to the lucrative Miami club scene as an exotic dancer. While this new job put food on the table, it significantly strained the mother-daughter relationship. The long hours and late nights spent with strangers left May feeling increasingly distant from her mom. On top of that, Narcy's romantic interest. The young mom frequently brings a new man into their home every few months, but none of them stay long enough to become a part of May's life. However, everything changes when Ben arrives. He is kind and intentional, making a genuine effort to be present in both May's and Narcy's lives. Ben shares a love for comic books, specifically Batman, which creates a special bond with 9-year-old May. For the first time, a stable father figure has entered her life. To solidify their connection, Ben makes the ultimate commitment. He and Narcy get married, transforming them into a unified family and providing May with a life she has never known. Before Ben came into my life, I had never known him as my father. However, over time, I began to see him in that light. And by then, he was truly the only father I had ever known. Ben doesn't just create a loving and supportive home, he also ensures our family's financial stability. This stability allows Narcy to finally leave her job at the adult club. Ben comes from a lineage of wealth, as his father owned one of Miami's most prestigious luxury hotels, the Fontainebleau, back in the 1950s. This hotel was a hotspot for iconic celebrities, hosting legends like Frank Sinatra, Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, and even John F. Kennedy. The Fontainebleau regularly organized glamorous events for Hollywood's elite and was featured in blockbuster films like Scarface and Goldfinger. With his strong reputation in the industry, Ben successfully launches his own business, specializing in hosting extravagant conferences at luxury hotels. His wife, Narcy, is by his side, playing an essential role in their success. While Ben manages the business operations, Narcy takes on the personal touches, engaging with clients through handshakes, remembering the names of their children and pets, and even knowing their favorite wines. Within a few years, the Novak family sees significant financial growth, symbolizing the American dream with a stunning waterfront home in Fort Lauderdale, a 60-foot yacht, and luxurious vacations. Narcy enjoys indulging in designer clothes, while Ben continues to fuel his childhood passion for Batman, spending thousands on memorabilia. As business flourishes, Ben's passion for Batman intensifies. He even acquires a real-life Batmobile, the iconic vehicle from the 60s TV series. This newfound success enables Ben and May to bond more deeply, creating a strong father-daughter relationship. Now an adult, May takes pride in her own family, raising 2 wonderful boys who adore their grandpa Ben and his collection of action figures. Finally, May feels a sense of security. Her family feels complete and is growing in ways she never anticipated. Having always desired a child of his own, Ben approaches May with a heartfelt proposal. He asks her to consider legally adopting him as her father, a gesture that would solidify their bond forever. Without hesitation, May realizes this is the perfect moment for such a commitment. It embodies everything she has ever wanted, and it would be a meaningful gesture for Ben as well. She thinks to herself, this would be something nice for him, a way to say, you have a daughter now. In the spring of 2009, a shocking turn of events unfolded when Ben's elderly mother, Bernice, failed to answer her phone. Alarmed by her silence, a concerned neighbor reached out to the Novak family, prompting them to drive immediately to Bernice's home. As Ben entered the house, he was met with a horrifying sight. His mother lay motionless, face down on the kitchen floor. Blood had pooled around her, and the scene was unsettling. Outside, they could see her car with the door ajar, her broken glasses scattered on the ground, and more blood staining both the vehicle and the pavement. Given Bernice's age of 86, detectives noted that death by falling was a common occurrence. They quickly determined that her passing was likely accidental. It was a tragic accident. Bernice seemed to have lost her balance while getting out of the car, hitting her head with no one around to call for help. By the time anyone found her, it was already too late. She succumbed to her injuries, and there was nothing to suggest foul play. Nothing had been taken, no windows were broken, and there were no signs of forced entry whatsoever. The impact of her death left me hurt and sad. I knew I had to stay strong for Ben, who was really struggling to cope with the loss. Bernice's passing was devastating for him, but there was a nagging feeling that the circumstances of her death didn't sit right. Ben couldn't shake the suspicion that something was amiss and found it hard to accept that his mother's death was merely an accident. Ben's voice was filled with stress as he confided in me about his concerns regarding his mother's death. He suspected that there was more to the story than what the police claimed, so he decided to enlist the help of a private investigator to look deeper into Bernice's untimely demise. After returning from a business trip just outside of New York City, where he had organized a high-profile convention, Ben was haunted by the memory of a horrifying scene he encountered upon his arrival. It was now July 9th, 2009, and the Novaks were boarding their flight to New York, unaware of the grim events that awaited them 1,200 miles up the East Coast. Despite the heavy burden of grief, the family endeavored to support one another and move forward as best as they could, with Narcy assisting May in the transition. On July 12, 2009 at 6:00 a.m., Ben finally heads to bed after a sleepless night spent finalizing the crucial details for the last day of his special convention. Meanwhile, Narcy and her daughter May make their way to the hotel dining room for breakfast. Narcy eats hastily, barely taking a moment to pause before leaving May to finish her meal alone. Moments later, May's phone rings. One of the security personnel urgently tells her, "You need to come up to room 452. It's about your parents. We need you here now." May rushes upstairs, her mind racing with worry over the sudden request. Nothing, however, could prepare her for the scene that awaited her. As she enters the parlor, she is met with a chaotic scene. Police officers are everywhere. As May rushes in, she hears frantic voices nearby. Someone is saying it's a complete bloodbath inside. Confused, she asks, "What are you people talking about?" Just then, her mother, Narcy, screams at the top of her lungs, her cries echoing with despair. May stands there baffled until her eyes fall upon 2 feet lying motionless on the bedroom floor, bloodied and horrific. A police officer approaches her with the devastating news. Her father is dead. In that moment, May's world shatters around her. While forensic technicians and detectives begin their meticulous search of the crime scene and access the hotel security cameras, Narcy is led into an interrogation room. They need to hear her account, as she was the one who tragically discovered his body. "Tragically, I discovered his body. As I walked in, I tripped over something and realized he was lying on the floor. It didn't look like Ben should be there. A sense of dread overcame me, and something told me that something terrible had happened. I ran out into the hallway, screaming and knocking on every door, desperate for help. Only a monster could commit such an evil act." Meanwhile, Narcy Novak waited outside the interrogation room for her mom, processing everything that had just happened. She tried to recall every detail leading up to Ben's murder, desperate to figure out who in the world could have done this. "What did I think happened to Ben?" Thoughts of the comics and all the people he had invited to the house for the comics flooded my mind. As the interrogation unfolds, Narcy discloses to the detectives that someone had indeed been targeting Ben's treasured Batman collection. Among the items in question is a rare comic valued at $43,000, which Ben intended to sell that very weekend. He mentions that he was negotiating a deal related to this comic and that tensions had arisen between him and a comic book collector. Narcy suggests that this disagreement could have led to a break-in, with the intruder potentially gaining access to her room and harming her husband. However, as the detectives search through Ben's hotel room, they observe something peculiar. They discover expensive jewelry, designer sunglasses, a substantial amount of cash, and several coveted pieces from Ben's Batman collection, all left undisturbed. Among the untouched items, detectives discover a Rolex watch and a Cartier watch, raising suspicions about the nature of the incident. Given the wealth of valuables left behind, it seems improbable to consider this a mere robbery. With little evidence to support such a theory, the detectives swiftly dismiss the idea of a robbery gone awry and refocus their investigation on Ben's wife, Narcy. When questioned about her marriage, Narcy speaks fondly of her husband, expressing that he was the love of her life. She reveals her deep concern about the future without him, stating, "I love my husband. I should have been there, and I wish I had died with him." Despite her emotional response, detectives feel they have little to work with and continue their interviews with Narcy, aiming to construct a timeline of the events that occurred. They asked her to recount the events of that morning as accurately as possible to confirm her whereabouts and potentially clear her as a suspect. According to her, she left the room around 7 a.m. to oversee breakfast for a convention guest. When she returned 30 minutes later, she discovered Ben dead. We reviewed the security footage, which corroborated her movements. The video showed her entering the room at the time she specified, and the lock records confirmed her access using her key. Based on her account and the evidence, we were able to establish a timeline and verify that she was indeed where she claimed to be. With Narcy's alibi confirmed and no other suspects on the list, we reached a frustrating dead end. Despite thorough investigations, no one could fathom who might have wanted to harm Ben. This left me feeling a mix of anger, confusion, and fear. I desperately needed answers and results. It was imperative that something be done immediately. As a last resort, the lead investigators assigned officers to sift through every hotel security camera in the days leading up to the murder. This daunting task involved combing through hours of footage from one of the busiest weeks at the hotel, coinciding with Ben's highly publicized convention. The sheer volume of data was overwhelming. Detectives estimate there are over 2,000 potential suspects, including guests, staff, and visitors, but they have no definitive leads on whom to focus their investigation. They meticulously analyze every security camera in the hotel, replaying footage over and over in search of clues. Eventually, their persistence pays off when they spot two suspicious figures in the footage that correlate with the exact time of the murder. These individuals are seen exiting the hotel rapidly around the time frame of the homicide. Intriguingly, the same two figures also appear days prior to the incident, indicating they may have been surveying the hotel and familiarizing themselves with its floor plan. Their presence is further confirmed when they are observed lurking in the lobby, even appearing just a few feet behind Ben at one point, seemingly stalking his every move. At one point, we noticed these same two men seemingly stalking Ben's every move in the lobby, which is actually quite unsettling. Detectives also uncover something intriguing from the murder scene: fragments of a broken pair of sunglasses. At first glance, these fragments appear to match the sunglasses worn by the mysterious man in the lobby. Looking at the surveillance video, we observe that one of the potential suspects had these glasses on when he entered the hotel on the day of the homicide. However, as he exits the building, he is no longer wearing them. Despite having identified these two individuals, we still have no idea who they are. As the investigation unfolds, the focus shifts to the surveillance footage, which, while crucial, lacks clarity. The police have identified two potential suspects from the video, but unfortunately their identities remain unknown, and there is no additional information linking them to the crime. As time passes, the ability to identify these leads becomes increasingly challenging, diminishing the hope of finding Ben's killer. By September 2, 2009, the Novaks finally lay Ben to rest at Mount Lebanon Cemetery in Queens County, New York. He is interred beside his parents, and a tearful Bernice bids farewell to the man she loved and called her father. A grieving May is left with unanswered questions and a sense of injustice. No one knows the exact circumstances surrounding Ben's death, and as time passes, a killer remains at large while the family mourns their profound loss. Detectives are diligently investigating, meticulously examining every detail of Ben's life in pursuit of clues that could reignite the case. During their inquiry, they discover the tragic news of Bernice's passing, Ben's mother, who had died just a few months prior. This revelation raises unsettling questions. Is it merely a coincidence, or is something more sinister at play? As they delve deeper, the New York detectives reach out to the Florida Police Department for additional information. In reviewing the evidence, they find it perplexing. The circumstances surrounding Bernice's death simply do not add up. During the investigation, we observed blood spatter inside Bernice's vehicle, indicating the possibility of an impact wound. It became evident that there was more to her case than initially met the eye. Upon obtaining a copy of the autopsy report, detectives grew even more concerned as they realized the extent of Bernice's injuries went far beyond what they had first imagined. She had numerous fractures throughout her body, including a broken skull, a broken finger, and her teeth were shattered. These injuries seemed far too severe to be the result of a simple fall. What initially appeared to be one homicide had evolved into two, prompting us to reconsider the situation and ask ourselves what was happening to this family. Is someone trying to destroy this family? What are we overlooking? Who could possibly want to harm the Novaks to this extent? With Bernice's death now deemed suspicious, the case begins to take a clearer shape for investigators. It appears that someone is methodically eliminating the Novak family, one member at a time, while a killer remains at large. There are currently no suspects and 2 lives have already been lost. Detectives are increasingly worried that May, Narcy, and Ben's grandchildren could be next. May feels an ominous presence. She believes she is being followed and has received threats on her life. She is acutely aware of the danger surrounding her family. Without any hesitation, May makes the decision to protect her children, choosing to go into hiding. She relocates to a new apartment and completely changes their daily routine, hoping to evade the elusive killer. In her pursuit of justice for her father, May is more determined than ever. Hoping to throw the killer off their trail, she alters their routine completely after going into hiding with her children. Then out of nowhere, an unexpected clue changes everything. Over 1,000 miles from the New York hotel where Ben was brutally murdered, detectives in Miami receive an anonymous letter written in Spanish. The shocking claims in the letter leave them stunned, containing references to several facts that were never released to the public, which prompts them to take the letter seriously. Within it, the anonymous author accuses a man named Cristobal Valiz of orchestrating Ben's death. Without wasting any time, Miami police run his name through their system. The detectives uncover an address for Cristobal in Philadelphia and decide to pay him a visit without delay. They arrive unannounced at his home, hoping to catch him off guard. Upon their arrival, he requests the officers to wait in the dining room while he steps away to get dressed. While Cristobal is out of sight, the officers take the opportunity to search the area quietly. During their search, they notice a pile of documents prominently displayed on the kitchen table. Among the papers are Western Union receipts documenting money sent to various individuals. Notably, they find money orders addressed to a man named Alejandro Garcia back in Florida. The detectives jot down his name quickly, just before Cristobal returns. As they contemplate this discovery, the police wonder if these payments could serve as the vital link they need in their investigation. Florida investigators are actively searching for a man named Alejandro Garcia in relation to finding Ben's killer, but they quickly realize that a name alone isn't sufficient to crack the case. The challenge lies in the fact that many individuals share the same name within the state. However, a significant breakthrough occurs when investigators, through canvassing residents' doors in Miami, uncover a vital detail about one specific Alejandro Garcia. He is known to have only one eye. Equipped with this key piece of information, Florida investigators enter his name into their system, filtering results for individuals missing an eye. This allows them to refine their search effectively. With this new focus, detectives are finally able to narrow down their leads and find a potential match. Investigators found a match for Alejandro Garcia in their system, specifically for a man with one eye. As they reviewed hotel surveillance footage, they identified him as one of the men seen lurking around Ben Novak in the days leading up to the murder. In the video, Garcia is wearing a dark shirt and standing alongside a mystery partner at the hotel just before the murder occurred. The clarity of the shots taken on Friday made it unmistakably clear it was Alejandro. Detectives noted that he consistently wore sunglasses to shield his impaired eye. Reviewing security footage from the first day of the convention revealed that the suspect also had sunglasses on while entering before the time of the murder, but notably not afterward. This detail provided a crucial explanation for the broken sunglasses found at the crime scene. The police now officially have their main suspect, thanks to the broken sunglasses found at the crime scene. The hunt for the killer has begun, and we quickly start knocking on doors in Miami, but no one comes forward with information. We suspect he might be at a nearby gas station. Eventually, we identify Alejandro Garcia and bring him in for questioning. When confronted, he insists he can prove he was in New York at the time of the murder. His repeated assertions of innocence seem disoriented, and he appears confused, shaking his head. However, the reality is grim. The police have footage that places him at the scene during the time of Ben's murder, and they possess physical evidence that corroborates this. As the pressure mounts, he begins to panic. Then he utters something completely unexpected. He confides that he is afraid for his family's safety, acknowledging the danger posed by the people responsible for the crime. With mounting intensity, he reveals that he had been contracted to kill someone, a young woman. From his wallet, he pulls out a photo that reveals a familiar face staring back at him. It's a picture of May. He explains that he had been given details about her routine and the car she drove to work, instructions that lay out the plan for the hit. Now, with confirmation from investigators, May understands the gravity of her situation. A hit has been ordered on her life, and the individual behind it is still at large. If she doesn't act quickly, the lives of her and her children could be in jeopardy. Throughout the entire ordeal, Narcy has remained surprisingly composed, despite the brutal murder of her husband of 30 years. She has been cool and collected, yet there is an air of secrecy that surrounds her. As May reflects on the day of the interrogation, she recalls a peculiar detail that she had previously dismissed. Someone had derogatorily referred to another person's daughter as a slut. Now May feels an unsettling gut reaction, sensing that the true source of the chaos might be closer than she ever imagined. What if the mother she holds dear is somehow responsible for transforming her life into this terrifying nightmare? With each passing moment, her suspicions intensify, leaving her grappling with the unsettling thought that she is a terrible person for even entertaining such an idea. May grapples with the unsettling thought that her mother could be involved in these events, a notion she struggles to accept. Although she may decide to confront her mother directly, she is plagued by doubts about whether anyone would believe her claims. Despite all evidence pointing to Narcy's innocence, including the police clearing her alibi at the time of the murder, May is convinced that Narcy has orchestrated everything from behind the scenes. Encouraged by her unwavering love for Ben, she refuses to back down. Instead, she embarks on her own investigation, determined to uncover any evidence that could validate her suspicions. To do this, she resolves to revisit the origins of her troubles, planning a trip to the family's Fort Lauderdale house. When I arrived at the family's house in Fort Lauderdale, I was sifting through the office for belongings when I suddenly looked up to see my mother charging at me with a crowbar. In an instant, Narcy swung the crowbar with full force, aiming directly for my head. Reacting quickly, I raised my arm to shield myself. But in that moment, I realized she was not the woman I once knew. She had transformed into someone frighteningly different. Fear took over, and I bolted from the house, screaming. Neighbors rushed out in response to the commotion. But as Narcy realized the growing number of witnesses, she halted her pursuit, shouting that I was a traitor. Deep down, I understood that her actions were deeply wrong, and despite the fact that she was my mother, I had always sensed the darkness within her. I never imagined she would go this far. Narcy had a clear motive for her actions, particularly because Ben had named his mother, Bernice, as the beneficiary of his $10 million estate. Although he had also recently included May and her two boys in his will, Narcy would end up with nothing. Their prenup entitled her to a mere $65,000, meaning she would have to eliminate all potential heirs to access Ben's fortune. However, there was one significant problem. Despite investigators uncovering more shocking details that revealed Narcy's true motive, there was no physical evidence linking her to either murder. Without this crucial evidence, arresting her remained impossible. It seemed that Narcy had almost pulled off the perfect crime, but investigators had one more trick up their sleeves. Narcy had nearly executed the perfect crime. However, there was a significant hurdle to overcome. There was no physical evidence linking her to either murder, and without that connection, she couldn't be arrested. Desperate and tormented, she cried out, "Give it to me right now. I want to die." Meanwhile, investigators were not without resources. They hatched a plan to secure irrefutable proof of her sinister intentions. Prosecutors made a strategic move by approaching Alejandro Garcia, the one-eyed hitman caught on security footage, with an enticing proposition, a significantly reduced sentence in exchange for his complete testimony. This deal prompted Alejandro to finally reveal the entire sequence of events. He recounted how he and his accomplice were dropped off at approximately 6:45 in the morning. They then walked directly to Ben's suite, where they were welcomed by none other than Narcy herself. Inside the hotel room, Narcy herself opened the door, allowing the two hitmen entry while Ben remained fast asleep, oblivious to his wife's treachery. Armed with metal dumbbells and duct tape, they wasted no time in launching their attack. With Ben's hands bound behind his back, he stood no chance against their assault. Quickly overpowered, he was at the mercy of his attackers. As the brutal scene unfolded, Narcy made a chilling demand, asking, "Did you cut out his eyes? I told you to cut out his eyes." At that moment, Ben was still alive, trapped in a nightmare. Alejandro seized him by the head, lifted it, and proceeded to carry out Narcy's orders, cutting out his eyes. Once the gruesome task was completed, the three of them calmly exited the hotel room, leaving behind the horrifying aftermath of their actions. Narcy believed her plan had unfolded flawlessly, but that was far from the truth. The investigators had finally pieced together the events surrounding Ben's murder. In a chilling revelation, Alejandro disclosed that Ben was not the only victim Narcy had orchestrated to be killed. The hitman recounted another sinister job he had completed when he successfully ambushed Bernice Novak, Ben's 86-year-old mother. As Bernice pulled into her garage, Alejandro stealthily crouched down, following her car inside. Armed with a wrench, he struck her in the face, committing the act of violence that would haunt the family. In exchange for carrying out this horrific crime, Alejandro was paid $600. Shockingly, with this statement, authorities immediately sprang into action. Narcy was arrested and charged with the murders of both Ben and his mother. Bernice Ben Novak Jr.'s wife, Narcy Novak, has been charged with conspiracy to commit domestic violence and stalking. Prosecutors allege that she orchestrated the murders to secure her husband's family fortune. Currently, Narcy awaits trial, steadfastly maintaining her innocence despite the overwhelming evidence against her. She adamantly denies all accusations, resorting to any claims she can to evade imprisonment, even going so far as to accuse her own daughter and assert that her husband is still alive. In a bizarre twist, she questions, "Is my husband dead? Is my husband alive?" leaving investigators with no clear answers. Her statements raise further suspicion, as her defiance only deepens the intrigue surrounding the case. A federal jury has convicted Narcy Novak for the deaths of Ben Novak Jr. and his mother, Bernice. With the detectives and prosecutors working diligently, the unraveling of a dark truth revealed a web of her mother's lies and manipulation. This ultimate betrayal, aided by her, brought the case together, leading to a stark reminder of the damage caused. Now her mother faces a future confined behind bars. For me, the road ahead remains uncertain. But one thing is clear: justice has been served. She failed to see the love that surrounded her daughter and two grandchildren who adored her. Now she is left with nothing, a painful consequence of her choices. Despite everything, no matter what, I love my mother. She was my mother, and she had grandkids who adored her. Grandkids who would have done anything for her. And indeed, many did. Yet she threw it all away, all for money. I've come to terms with the harsh reality that the next time I see her, it will be to bury her in prison. Part of me has grown to feel sorry for her over the years, realizing that she could have led such a different life. She's missing out on her grandkids, her brothers and sisters, her nieces and nephews. My oldest is now 25, and soon he'll have kids of his own, and she will miss all of it. It saddens me, as she never truly saw what she had. As time goes on, May continues her journey of healing, striving to stay strong for her own children. In her father's memory, she welcomes a new addition to the family, a third baby boy named after Ben. Now, May is dedicated to building a brighter future for her children, a future where they will always experience a mother's unconditional love.